Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday morning. It is August 16th, anniversary of the death of Elvis Presley. I tell you one thing, you cannot get a jelly-filled donut in the city of Memphis today in honor of the king. I know Uncle Jeff, the big German, will knock down a dozen Krispy Kremes. You know, there was a rumor for years that at Elvis's, the Krispy Kreme near Graceland, there was a missing stool there at the counter, like the missing stool formation, in honor of the king, that he would go there and eat a lot of them. And I don't know if you ever went there and ate a dozen at a time, jelly-filled donuts, but he sure liked them, and they're delicious. So anyway, that's for Krispy Kreme. You ever want to be a sponsor on this show? I think we got a lot of people that eat your product. But great lineup today. George Plaster up in Nashville, Plaster Sports, joins us in the first segment. Loran Smith, longtime member of the Georgia Football Network, Georgia historian, and a patriarch of the history of Southern college football. Also 64 consecutive Masters at Augusta National he has attended. What a streak he has. I don't know of anybody in America, much less the world, who can say they've been to 64 straight Masters. If they can, hey, you know how to find me. Do it. He's written a book about Georgia's national championship football team. He's a busy man because he's going to be writing another one, and maybe another one. But he's been holding up in some rough places like Sea Island and St. Simons on the coast of Georgia. But you know what? You got to be somewhere when you're writing. We'll also have Jack Turner, the Sidelines resident attorney, will join us to talk a little about the situation with Michael Orr and the Blind Side and these latest allegations that have come out. I mean, interesting, really, really, really interesting that they've come out, and years later, really, well, we'll let Jack talk about that. Hour number 2, legendary Southern sports writer Phillip Marshall checks in with us. I think he's up in Huntsville today. We're going to talk with him about Southern college football in general. And in the final segment, Rodney Orr checks in from Tuscaloosa, Tider Insider. And we will be hearing the latest, what's going on with preseason practice at Alabama. Limited information, but Rodney has a lot of information. He digs and finds the stories that most people don't have. That's why you need to watch Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m. on YouTube, Tider Insider TV. I recommend it. It's a weekly program, 30 minutes, Rodney and Gary, and they really put out a lot of great information about what's going on at Alabama. So we're here 6 days a week, 25 shows a month, 50 hours a month. Do the math, 12 months in a year. That's at least 600 hours of content. We talked about the SEC and your favorite team. And, you know, I think what we got to remember to do is look and bring in smart people. Okay, yeah, here we go. All right, there we go. George Plaster joining us. But we got to remember to bring in smart people who can comment intelligently on what's happening in college athletics. So without any further ado, follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. I'm going to head to the New York Transit Authority to the greeter of the year, Mr. Larry Bud Melman. You remember Larry Bud Melman on the Letterman show, George? He would greet people at the New York Transit Authority and say, you know, I would like to extend a welcome on behalf of all the citizens of the friendliest city in the world, New York City, to all of you people who come here with hopes and dreams of making it big before they're crushed and you're squashed like a bug, but you're like a hot towel with that. We need late night TV to be funny, not a political rant like it is now. George Plaster on sports. Lots happening right now. Gotta say, first question I have is, we talked about Vanderbilt a couple of days ago. Their first game, is it going to be at Dudley Field against Hawaii, as Coach Reed called it, August 26th? Are they playing at another stadium? Because I know they are doing some renovations on the stadium. So I want to clear that up first.
Yeah, they're going to play at Dudley Field, and the configuration as they remove the horseshoe end zone is for about 28,500 seats. So when they play Hawaii in 10 days, that's what's going to happen. I've seen the same reports you have. They're not true. They are going to play at Vandy.
Okay, and that's why I did not repeat them, because I'm like, you know what? Talk to you, Chris Lee, somebody that would actually know. I'm just glad they're going to be playing at their stadium. They got off to a good start last year, put 63 points on Hawaii. But, real quick, Clark Lee, I don't believe he's been brought in to Vanderbilt. He went to MBA. He's a Vandy alum. I think he was brought in without question to change Vanderbilt completely, to do a 180. He's not just there to show up and be like the Washington Generals playing the Harlem Globetrotters. And I'm glad to see that. Vanderbilt deserves better than that. That's just my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, up to a point, I do agree. But the school has caused a lot of this over the years. I mean, let's be honest about this. They've caused a bunch of this, and they've really not, until here at the 11th hour, spent any money on facilities, football stadium, all that kind of stuff. This new chancellor seems interested in doing a lot of that, and good for him. It needs to happen. But they are, from a facility standpoint, they're not even in the same league with most of these other teams.
Well, you think you're hearing $300 million, $600 million, and that's a lot of money. But for how many decades did Vanderbilt do nothing? I think that's the reason why they're in this situation. Basketball, Bryce Drew turned Vanderbilt basketball backwards, and they don't seem to be. I mean, Jerry Stackhouse is doing some good things, but I'm just saying, you look at a city like Nashville, everybody wants to go there. You live there. Does everybody want Nashville to be the next Atlanta, though? Is it worth it?
Well, first of all, sadly, I think we are becoming Atlanta from a traffic standpoint. We've got some real infrastructure issues. And while we may be the it city, if we don't figure out some of the traffic issues, we're not going to be the it city for long. And I love Nashville. I grew up here, but there's some things right now that are really concerning about where all this is going. And I just hope whoever our next mayor is can figure out some of the problems that we've got.
Yeah. All right. So now let's switch gears. SEC coming up this season. There's so many narratives right now. Georgia going for a three-peat. Alabama, Nick Saban has never gone more than in the 3 years without winning a national championship. LSU, Brian Kelly, they played for the West Championship last year. They beat Alabama in overtime. You got Texas A&M. I think Bobby Petrino is calling the plays down there. I don't think Jimbo Fisher wants to bring him in and just blow the whole thing up. Granted, he walks away with generational wealth, but I want to start with your thoughts on, is Bobby Petrino, I think he's going to call the plays, and I think Jimbo Fisher is going to let him do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a tremendous amount of pressure down there right now. All the little J.R. Ewing wannabes have shelled out a lot of money, number one, to bring Jimbo in, but I think they're prepared to shell out an absolute ridiculous amount of money to get rid of him if he doesn't get his quarterback situation settled. So he brings Petrino in. I don't know if he, rolled in on a motorcycle or what he rolled in on, but, he certainly has offensive skills, and he's always been considered a very good play caller. And we'll just have to see. I'm not convinced they have the quarterback to get to the level they keep talking about. But, you might also say the same thing right now about Georgia. We don't know what Georgia has or what they don't have at quarterback, because this young guy, Carson Beck, he really has never played in any meaningful stuff. And that's a tough position to be in when you start talking words like three-peat.
Yeah, and Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton, Brock Vandegrift, 3 really talented players, but they all stuck around. They all stayed through spring. I think what Kirby Smart's done, when I look at Georgia, he's got those guys to say, all right, look at all the guys that are being drafted. 25 Georgia players in the last 2 years. That's a lot. Plus plenty of free agents. Do you think Kirby Smart has figured out how to be consistent and beat the portal? I listened to a lot of coaches on Marty and McGee on SEC Network this morning, and Lane Kiffin's talking about, people used to say, what's the difference in the NFL and college? Well, the big difference was the locker room. In the pros, it's a business. It's a paycheck. In college, you're filled and surrounded by kids that love the school and love being where they are. Some of them have been with you 4 or 5 years. Now with the portal, it's just, at this moment, this is where I need to be. But Kirby Smart's not losing a lot of guys to the portal, nor is he bringing a lot of guys into the portal. What do you think he's doing? Granted, he's winning, but it takes time. He's 81-15 in 7 years.
Yeah, I also think he gets the advantage of kids want to be around that kind of an environment. First of all, they've got a great home field in Sanford Stadium. Secondly, you start throwing out words like three-peat. I think all of us, the competitive spirit, would love to be a part of that. Not to take anything away from what he's done, but, it's probably easier to get a kid to go to Georgia and think about a three-peat than it is to get a kid to go to Vandy. It's just, it's a night and day difference.
Well, again, he learned a lot from Nick Saban. This is year 17 for Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And, Saban's, he's only 71, but he's like a 40-year-old. He's a youthful, age is just a number. You look at what Nick Saban has, he's being challenged. Being challenged by one of his former assistant coaches. There's a narrative out there that, this is, if he doesn't do it this year or next year, he'll walk away from the game. I think that's stupid. I think what he's done is he's delegated maybe too much authority and listened to some people that maybe weren't being honest. And I think he's going back to square one. I think you're going to see them more like the 2015, 2016 teams that played for and won one and lost the national championship and then won another one in 2017. But I think that's what Nick Saban – people like Nick Saban don't suddenly quit being elite. I just don't see him going out there this year and not being – I think they'll be in the hunt the entire year for the national championship. Now, granted, there's a question at quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you. I'm not ready to bury him because anytime people have done that in the past, they've kind of paid dearly for it.
Yeah.
I do think there's a point in this where maybe he underestimated Kirby when he left and said, look, he's been a great defensive coordinator, but he's not going to accomplish the things that he ultimately accomplished. I don't doubt that Saban maybe underestimated Kirby just a little bit. And I don't mean that in an ugly way, but how many people could have seen to that level that they were going to get back-to-back national titles? What it takes to win a national title is not only you got to be really good, you got to get a little bit of luck. And, when you read off that stat a little while ago about, there hasn't been a 3-year period where Saban hasn't won a national title. Think about that.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable to think about. By the way, if you're wondering, I'm lost. I'm in the car driving, and I have no idea where the hell I'm going. And that's not a good feeling.
Where are you right now?
Well, I'm in West Nashville, and I'm trying to get somewhere where I thought I knew where I was going, and it's clear I don't know where I'm going. And it's also clear that from a technological standpoint, I'm not the best guest you've ever had on.
Well, you'll figure. Look, in Nashville, just look for the pike. I mean, how many pikes are there?
Well, I'm on one right now, and it's not doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I hope you get where you're going. And if you need to,
I hope I do too.
I hope if you need to get to Siri, we'll take a quick commercial break from one of our wonderful sponsors and come back to you if you need to do that. But just let us know. But George, I want to look at Tennessee. Josh Heupel in his third year. It's hard to believe they were 7-6, and then they go the second year 11-2, and I don't think they ever thought at the end of the year that South Carolina was gonna blindside them 63-38. Nobody saw that one coming, but that was ugly. And then you lose your star quarterback, Hendon Hooker. Well, Joe Milton III comes in, finishes out that game, leads them to that big win over Vanderbilt. They win the bowl game over the ACC champ Clemson. I think we saw in those games Joe Milton can do what you need to do. I mean, they dominated Clemson 31-14. Are you sold on Joe Milton to be the man? I know they've got Nico Lamaliva, allegedly $8 million worth of NIL. And how much pressure will there be if Joe Milton doesn't live up to expectations early to play the $8 million kid?
Well, you've laid it all out there. No, I'm not totally sold on him. What I saw from his Michigan days and then also early at Tennessee was a guy who grabbed the sawdust out of the ball and tried to throw a 140-mile-an-hour fastball on every pitch. I'll admit, I was absolutely shocked at how well he played against Clemson. He didn't play all that well against Vandy, but he didn't have to.
Yeah.
He missed 3 or 4 wide open receivers. He's not a very good touch thrower. Now, he may be considerably better and make me eat my words, and I hope he does, because everything I hear about him is that he's really a great teammate, an outstanding young man. This is a little bit like Jonathan Crompton a few years ago. And the problem here is that you got this dark cloud for Milton called Nico. And I wonder if Heupel has to go to Milton and say, listen, if things don't go rosy early, I'm not benching you. Because if he doesn't, human nature suggests that Milton is going to be thinking that thought. And it's hard enough to run that offense to the level Hendon Hooker did while you've got somebody breathing down your neck in Nico, who by all people that know say he's really the real deal. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, because so much of what people are banking on is predicated on Milton being really good. And he might be. But then again, there's some past history that says he might not be.
Yeah. I mean, we know he lost his job at Michigan after 7 starts as a freshman. And then he lost it at Tennessee and got hurt, and Hendon Hooker took over. But I think what that tells me is Josh Heupel took a guy, Hendon Hooker, out of Greensboro, North Carolina, signed with Virginia Tech, was there with Justin Fuente. He takes him and develops him behind Joe Milton. And once Hooker came in there, you're like, wow, that's your backup. And so then Joe Milton has to sit behind Hendon Hooker. They become very close friends. I think Joe Milton has learned a lot. Athletically, he's a freak. He's 6'7", has the strong, again, what's the question? Can he throw the short and intermediate passes? I think he's going to be successful, but I think what we're also going to see is a potential drama of the NIL when you're paying a kid. And I don't know how that contract works on that $8 million. I doubt it's all up front. Imagine there are benchmarks in there. You've got to, first off, he's got to play. I can't imagine them paying him to be on the bench very long. So that's going to be a fun story to watch. Now, got another one I want to ask you about. Being in the mid-state, Kentucky, Mark Stoops, year 11. What is it that he's trying to – what's his ultimate goal, do you think? I mean, we can't read his mind, but they've had 2 10-win seasons in the last 5 years, which for Kentucky and their standards is as good as it gets. Now they've got Devin Leary comes in from NC State. He may have been the best player in the portal. He's going to be their quarterback. But, man, they had Will Levis last year, and everything looked on the up, and it didn't really happen. What's different about this scenario?
Well, first, I think the turf toe thing that he had was probably more serious than people wanted to let on. You asked what's the next thing at Kentucky. I don't know, and maybe he doesn't know, but I wonder if it's to get to a point where when they get the big boys at home, that they can get it done, that they can go toe-to-toe with a Georgia in Commonwealth Stadium. Who knows whether that's realistic or not? Because the truth of it is, for a younger audience, there was a time where Kentucky and Vandy were the same. And to see the way Kentucky has risen above that old standard, it just blows my mind. So now they've gotten to a point where they're better than some of the SEC schools. They're good enough to be going to bowl games pretty consistently. And now the question is, can they lower the boom on somebody at home? By the way, I'm hoping that nobody lowers the boom on me. I'm getting close, but I still don't know where the hell I'm going. To me, it's just, you got to be realistic. They were able to go to Florida a year ago, and we discovered later that Florida wasn't all that good. When they get a Kentucky or a Georgia or an Alabama at Commonwealth Stadium or whatever they call it now, can they go toe-to-toe with them? To me, that might be the next level of what there is to talk about at Kentucky.
Yeah, I like that. I like that line of thinking. Because now, they almost did it with Georgia last year. Georgia's 2 toughest games, closest games, really, until they played Ohio State in that playoff game in Atlanta, were at Missouri and at Kentucky. And, people don't remember that, but they were. They were lucky to get out of both of those, especially Missouri. Switching gears,
right.
South Carolina, Shane Beamer. This is year 3. Again, last year, Spencer Rattler really wasn't living up to expectations. But in those last 4 or 5 games, he switched it into another gear. His whole career, he was pulled in 2 consecutive Red River shootouts, Oklahoma-Texas games. And I thought he was a locker room cancer. I did. I was like, well, I wouldn't want this kid. But you have to trust Shane Beamer. He had a relationship with him having been on the staff at Oklahoma. And he's had a whole offseason. He didn't go in the portal. He should be happy. He's the man. What's the ceiling on South Carolina with Shane Beamer this year, considering they've got Georgia, they got Florida, they got Tennessee and Kentucky, and they got a lot of competition?
Yeah, deep down, it's probably close to the same as it was a year ago. You're right about one thing. Rattler found something late, and it made him a bunch of money because I guess you could say in free agency he signed a new deal with South Carolina. And I don't think a lot of people at week number 7 or 8 thought that was going to happen. Then all of a sudden he exploded against Tennessee. We all know how that went. And then kind of quietly, he did the same thing with Clemson. And so, when that happened, that got everybody's attention. There was sort of a like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, this is 2 weeks in a row against real big boys. And so it bought him a new contract. I like Beamer. To me, he's got a youthful energy about him that if I was that age, I would want to play for him. But I also know what the limitations are at South Carolina. You know, are we supposed to believe that they're at the level of Tennessee or Georgia? No. Can they be at Kentucky's level? Maybe, although I don't think they are right now. They're better right now than Missouri and Vandy. I'm leaving one team out, and I can't think of who it is. But I mean, Florida. Realistically, yeah, and right now, I mean, that might be a toss-up. The Florida at the end of last year wasn't very good. I watched Vandy push them around here in late November. I was shocked at how bad Florida was. I was even more shocked when Richardson got the quarterback job with the Colts. Basically on day one. They better be really careful. That kid had some really good games, and he had some stinkeroos. And, that probably won't work in the NFL.
Well, no way it is. And I'm just looking around, and the more you think about it, the school we really hadn't talked about much is Florida. And we have a lot of Gator bait, Buddy Martin, Franz Beard, Ben Troop, Allie Peak Wilbur, really knowledgeable Gator people on the show regularly. And they're recruiting really well. But the SEC East, I guess what I'm making a point is, the West we already know is the toughest division and the toughest conference in America. Is there any team that you see other than, in the East, in the West, that you think, other than Bama, could knock Georgia out if they played them in Atlanta for an SEC championship, which is a home game for Georgia? And the way they've been playing lately, they're buying up 80 or 90% of the tickets before the game is even announced. Kind of a sleeper in the West.
Rob, I didn't get the whole.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I didn't get the whole question. If you're asking who's a sleeper
in the West, yeah, that you think could knock Georgia off in Atlanta.
I guess it could be. Gosh, I mean, so you eliminate Alabama and LSU from sleeper.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe you're talking Arkansas. I don't see it, but there are a lot of things I don't see, including where it is I'm trying to navigate to right now. It's not working.
George, you better be careful. Look, we're going to take, I know you got to go, but we're going to take a quick commercial break in just a second, but let people know how they can follow you. I'm going to take Arkansas. That wouldn't surprise me. KJ Jefferson doesn't run so much that he gets banged up and doesn't miss 2 or 3 games like he did last year. If he's healthy in every game, and he's bigger than most of the linebackers, I think Arkansas is that sleeper in the West. All right, George, tell people how they can follow you. Let's do this again next week, and I hope you get safely where you're headed to there in the mid-state Nashville.
Thank you. I promise the next time I won't be in the car. This is a little crazy, but you can. My show is 2 to 4 o'clock Central Time every day with Watson Browne and Kelly Holcomb, and you can watch the show on my Twitter site, which is George Plaster TN, or the show site, the George Plaster Show. I think I said we're on Facebook and YouTube as well.
Oh, we lost him. All right. Well, look, George Plaster with us there. That's Plaster Sports up in Nashville. Let's do this. Take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back. Loran Smith will be joining us, the legendary sideline reporter, over 50 years on the Georgia Football Network, patriarch of Georgia and Southern football history, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on this Wednesday morning midweek show here, Sidelines, broadcasting live from Cross County. Interesting takes from George Plaster. That guy really, really, really knows what he's talking about with covering not just Vanderbilt and the Titans and the Predators and all, but the whole SEC. And it's really fun to get somebody on with that kind of a background and all. Of course, he's done broadcasting for years. And our next guest, Loran Smith, will be with us here momentarily. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about this upcoming Georgia team. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun to watch that. And, I think that when I look at Georgia and I look at the competition in the SEC, I mean, Tennessee, they're rebuilding. And as they get stronger, Alabama has to play them every year. I mean, Alabama, until last year, had won 15 straight games against Tennessee. And now Tennessee gets the win. Suddenly, that puts them, they're number 12 in the preseason rankings. I mean, really, who cares? Texas is number 11. Oklahoma is number 20, and they were awful last year. It's the name. A lot of people that vote in these polls, they just vote for names they recognize. And it's a very difficult, very, very hard to do. And I think that people need to they got to think about what's going on with with the rankings. I mean, the 17 through 25, does anybody really pay attention to that? I don't think so. And I think I think that people get too caught up. No, you need to be ranked. It helps to be ranked in the preseason. And I think that I guess what I'm saying is the top 5, top 10, that really matters at this point. You want to have that kind of momentum, but it's hard to go wire to wire if you're preseason number 1. It's only been done a handful of times. And I think that's what people need to realize. This is the situation that I'm seeing. More and more I see it. And that is, people are all caught up. There's so much drama in the off season. That's where people get confused. All this drama in the off season, is that making your team better? Well, we get caught up in about who's being recruited and who's going in the portal and all. But what I see happening is you've got the preseason, you got the regular season, the postseason, and the off season. You better get some downtime in there. But looking at the portal, I think, again, the transfer portal has been around since October 15th of 2018. All right. That is the problem that we have is about 50% of these kids are not being picked up by other schools. All right. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We're going to be right back. Loran Smith will be joining us momentarily. Well, he's back. He's here with us right now. But I think what people need to get away from is, all right, what is the number one thing I want to see out of my team? Well, if you want to build a culture, you want to do it like what Kirby Smart's doing at Georgia. That's what you want. Loran Smith is a longtime veteran. Has been at Georgia for many years. He's the patriarch of Georgia football, Southern football. You cannot watch a documentary about the Southeastern Conference without seeing the pride of Wrightsville, Georgia. 64 consecutive Masters tournaments. One of the great authors. What do you got, Loran? Loran Smith, how are you this morning?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm driving from Augusta, Georgia to Washington, Georgia.
I got you. I know
I'm sorry.
So you're out on I'm saying you're out on your book signing tour. That's what I wanted to talk about. I know a lot of people are interested. This is the book about the 2021 National Championship Georgia team. I told you last year when you were talking about the book, I said the way Georgia's playing, get your pen ready because you're going to be writing some more. But let's talk about that book.
Well, it was a lot of fun, mainly because Kirby, who doesn't have time to write a book, did take the time to squeeze me in here and there until we got his thoughts down. And his thoughts were very helpful, very insightful. He analyzed the games, and he really he told me, he said, I don't have time to write, but I do want to do something because if we win the championship, it'll mean so much to so many people, including our own players. So he was great to work with, and I give you a good example. He could teach corporate CEOs something about time management. With him squeezing me in at his convenience, which was not a problem for me. To get his insight, I would have stood on my head to help the process if that were required. But we finished taping one day, and he said, "Now I hope that's it." I said, "No, I need one more session." He said, "Well, I don't have time." He says, "I've got to coach this football team." Now that was June of 22.
Yeah.
So he's thinking football the whole year round, like all coaches do, those great coaches. He's not the only one. But I said, well, here's some things we need to talk about. I really do need one more session. And he said, well, what are you doing Wednesday? I said, well, I'm here. He said, meet me at the airport at, I think it was 9:30, might have been 10:30. And I knew we were going somewhere. I had no idea where. So I later learned because of the manifest, but I went out, hopped on the plane. We flew to San Antonio where he was speaking to the Texas High School Coaches Association. He recruits Texas, so he honored their request for their high school coaching annual meeting and clinic. So I was able to interview him all the way out and back. So I got more than what I needed. And that's just sort of how he works. He's an exceptional person when it comes to touching all bases. He's not only an outstanding recruiter, he's an outstanding coach. And he doesn't let anything come between him and coaching his football team.
Yeah, and he talked, Loran, at SEC Media Days about getting to be a parent for 5 days up in South Haven, Mississippi, which is DeSoto County on the Mississippi side of Memphis. His son's on a travel ball team and how much fun he had doing that. But I can tell you, I know some people that know him from Tuscaloosa, and they love him, and they're like, man, who wouldn't want to play for him? I mean, his father was a high school coach down in Bainbridge, I think, and my God, who wouldn't want to play for a guy? And one thing I noticed about him is Kirby Smart walks around and says something to everybody on the field in the warm-ups, something encouraging. Just, words matter, don't they, Loran? What you say to people.
Well, I think they do. It's his way of communicating. There's a sincerity there. There's a good sort of communication. He makes the players feel good. He's unbelievably keen on making you feel good. Now, I tell everybody, you go in his office. If you get in his office, it's not easy to do. You're on the clock. He doesn't have any time for small talk because he wants to win and he wants to prepare to win. And the only person or persons who can interrupt his routine would be his wife and his kids. But there are parameters there with them. And with them, he shuts everything out. Now, I'll give you a good example. If he comes to speak, as he will next week, to the Athens Touchdown Club, he will get there early. He's very punctual. And he'll sit in the car, make any phone calls that are left over from the day, whatever he's got on his agenda that's unfinished, he'll take care of it. And when he gets in the meeting, he shuts everything else out and gives himself to the group. He meets people, he visits with them, and then when it comes time to talk, he wants to talk and leave. Not that he's being rude, but you can't stop and talk to one without 10 more jumping in line, and he'd never get out of there. So he's like a golfer. I watched Jack Nicklaus for years. Arnold Palmer too. They would figure out where they needed to be to get to a place from point A to point B in the most alacritous time and not offend people. I mean, he knows he's got to sign some autographs, but if you want an autograph, you got to keep up with them. Well, Kirby's the same way, and I think most coaches are. They know where the exit door is. And when they say good night or sayonara, then they make a beeline for it. And if you want to stop them and talk with them, you're going to have to tackle it. So, but what the whole meeting, the whole evening, he turns his cell phone off. He does not look at his cell phone while he's sitting there unless he's got something really serious with a recruit. So he has an amazing ability to compartmentalize everything to where when he's with you, if he agrees to be there, he's going to give of himself and give you the time you need and deserve for the appearance he's making.
Yeah. Loran, what about the 2021 team really stands out when you wrote the book, and what's the title of the book?
How about them dogs? The inside story of the 21 national championship. That's the subtitle, that last phrase. I really didn't write the book. Now, I typed it. Kirby's input was terrific. Now, I put down exactly what he said, and his thoughts were really terrific. I mean, he has great insights. As I tell everybody, he's a very smart man. His surname defines him. He's smart as hell. And it's not that anybody else isn't, but that's just a very apt description of him and how he functions.
Yeah, and he comes across, again, as a guy that studies a lot. I know when he was at Alabama, 9 years he was there. They won multiple national championships. How quickly... His first year at Georgia, he's 8-5. The very next year, they're playing for the national championship. Is Georgia, and somebody, when you look at Georgia from outer space and you're going, how can you not win there? Fourth most talent-rich state in America. And now I look at Kirby Smart's a young guy. He's only 46 or 47 years old. And then look at that staff. Will Muschamp. He's brought back Mike Bobo. Glenn Schumann. He's got some really good coaches. He loses Todd Monken, and he goes and gets a guy that was there 14 of the 15 years Mark Richt was there, had a lot of success.
Super success leadership. But, we watched Saban through the years. He lost a lot of coaches because coaches went there wanting to learn a guy that had the best thing going, but they move on to other opportunities. So I think the idea is if your quarterback gets in 3 years, he's going to leave. You got to replace him. So I think Kirby's attitude, and surely that was the same with Saban, is that he's going to realize that he's going to lose good coaches because they want to move on. Dan Lanning wanted to be a head coach, and he did a terrific job. He gave his best effort to coach the Georgia defense, and then he went right on out to Oregon, and Kirby turned around and hired Monken, and we didn't miss a beat. In fact, oh my gosh, Lanning was defensive coach and Monken's offense, but I'm using that as an example. We didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
And the same thing with defense. They moved Muschamp and Schumann up into co-coordinators, and the defense didn't miss a beat. And I don't think the offense will miss a beat. Todd Monken was an excellent football coach, but he was more cut out for the pro life, I think. I think it's easy to say that.
Yeah.
But he was happy to be in Athens, and he was happy to have an opportunity to win a championship. He felt he was best suited for the NFL.
Yeah. Loran,
if you do a good job with your program, you're going to lose coaches because they're going to get other opportunities.
Yeah.
Look at all the years ago, and I'm talking about 40 years ago, a lot of people wanted to coach with Frank Broyles at Arkansas because they felt like coaching for Broyles, and with Broyles' attitude, they were going to have a better opportunity. If you go back and look at it, just Broyles program at Arkansas, their next job was a head coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think look at the coaching tree that came out of there. I mean, it was impressive. Raymond Berry coached with Frank Broyles, Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll, Joe Gibbs, all on that staff with Frank Broyles. But you look now, Loran, at Kirby Smith, and I know you're on a tight schedule this morning, but Kirby Smart picks up the phone. Who's not going to want to come coach with him? Whether you're a dog or not, he has made that job, one of the jobs in the country. That in Alabama, Ohio State would be. But, one more question before you go. The constant talk about, we lost Loran. Houston, we have a problem. He was driving whereabouts unknown. Daniel Simpson Day has no grade point average. Jack, Mrs. Mission Control, come in. Do you hear me?
Loud and clear, Rob.
I was Loran Smith. The camera there was, I think, on the floor shooting up at the ceiling, but we could hear the audio fairly good. Jack, what happens sometimes with the marvel of technology is that you will suddenly someone will be talking and then it sounds like R2-D2 on Star Wars, kind of going, making all those funny noises. But if Loran is able to reboot and come back in, love to hear a little bit more with him. I know he's on his way to Washington, Georgia right now. The man is on the go, Jack, as I mentioned earlier, 64 consecutive Masters golf tournaments. All right, look, let's turn the attention to this Michael Orr story. We all know, living in Memphis, Michael Orr was on the streets, basically, ended up at Briarcrest High School, went to Ole Miss. The Toohey family took him in. I'm very kind of them. Suddenly, we're being told by some people out here that, oh, my God, this was not like you think, and I'm not getting money, whatever. Let's try to make some sense out of this. And I sent you that story that someone sent me.
I read this morning.
And, Jack, you being the resident barrister of Sidelines, let's go.
All right. Well, first of all, as to the details of the relationship between Michael Orr and the Toohey family, I don't know any more than anybody. The only people that really know that are Michael Orr and the Tooheys. The lawyers are even going to have some perspective, but I can assure you people frequently don't tell their lawyer everything, and so their perspective is going to be limited too.
You being a lawyer would say that?
Yeah, I'd say it all the time.
There we go.
Usually with a few cuss words thrown in too, but it's a family show. So.
Yeah. So let just kind of where it's coming from. There's a lot of stuff out there. And before we do it, I want to get with Loran real quick, and I want, if you can hang on with us, because I want to come back and I want to hear this. But Loran Smith, Loran, we lost you there for a second. I know you're driving, and I want to close out by saying, how can people get the book? Where is it available? Because you're a great writer, and it is a treat. It's a pleasure, an honor to read your writing.
Well, you're mighty kind. I appreciate that. The book is available wherever bookstores. Primarily, that would be Georgia. But the best way to get it, I think, for most people would be on Amazon. It has been the #1 sports book on Amazon for the several weeks. I don't know what the response is today, but we're mighty fortunate, Kirby and I are. And I think people will enjoy the background on Kirby and also his insights into what made that champion. But you can get it best, I think, on Amazon.
All right, and Loran, the book now. Look, last year Georgia wins another national championship. Are you thinking about another book? Because this doesn't happen very often, and there's a chance at a three-peat.
Well, if we three-peat, I guarantee you there'll be another book. But three-peat is such a challenge. I say, Rob, that three-peat is possible but not probable. Just can go wrong. We could have lost to Missouri last year. We could have lost to Ohio State. So I know some sort of.
Yeah, well, I think the message is, Loran, you got to appreciate them. And yeah, Loran,
you hear those things from coming out of.
Yeah, and there hadn't been one since 36, 37, and 38 with Minnesota. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kirby Smart said it best about people talking about Georgia has a, quote, easy schedule. He said, well, if you're on this Georgia football team, you're going through practice every day, you're playing Georgia. Last time I checked, Georgia's a pretty damn good football team. I like that approach. That's the psychology of Kirby Smart.
He's on top of his game, but it's like everything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's in your opinion as a coach, how would Larry Munson have liked Kirby Smart?
Oh, he'd been over the top, I'm sure. Oh my God, what a coach.
Yeah. I mean, we just kicked Tennessee in the face with a hobnail boot. Michael Hayden, oh my! I mean, he'd just be going crazy. I just cannot imagine. He goes, Kirby's out there dancing wearing that visor. Spurrier wears a visor. We don't wear visors. But God, Loran, every time you're on, you remind us of why we love college football so much. I mean, you are, a lot of guys your age would want to just be retired and just kicking back, and you are on the road. I mean, many times I've talked to you, you'd be on the way to pick up Vince Dooley, God rest his soul, going to speak somewhere on a Friday night. Loran, keep doing whatever you're doing, getting up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, walking. You're a treasure, not just for Georgia, but for all of us who love college football. You are genuinely just a damn good dog and a great man. And thank you so much. And let's get you on here again soon for another visit. Too much of Loran Smith is never enough.
All right. You're mighty kind. I hope my wife's listening.
Okay. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, Loran Smith. All right, Jack, real quick, Phillip Marshall's going to be on here with us in just a few minutes. Legendary sports.
Hear all the Alabama fans out there grinding their teeth at the thought of 1966 when you're talking about a three-peat, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know. That is something to think about. And Jack, real quick, you being a lawyer, this whole thing with Michael Orr, Hugh Freeze was the football coach at Briarcrest. I mean, and ward that one off at the pass. My God, I mean, he's the coach there, and they bring Michael Orr over there, and they go to Ole Miss. That kind of stuff happens every day. But what do you think is at the root of Michael Orr's motives or his entourage with the Tuohys? Because the Tuohys, financially, I don't know them, but I think they're in pretty damn good standing. What motivates him other than maybe some people around him that don't have really his best intentions first and foremost?
It's a great question. And, Sean Tuohy did an interview with Jeff Calkins in the Daily Memphian. And he said that they had, he had sold he used to own every Taco Bell in the Memphis area. Sold them in about 6 different transactions for $213 million. So he's not hurting for money.
No.
And the small amount of residuals this movie might have produced would not normally justify, trying to hide money from a kid. However, that being said, what's her name? Martha Stewart went to jail for what was really a trifling sum compared to what she owns, or for that insider trading scam. That being said, no, I don't think Sean Tuohy did do anything unethical, and we're going to find out one way or the other, because if they filed this lawsuit, they'll subpoena the records from the studio, they'll subpoena the records from Michael Lewis, bank statements, all that. We're going to see what money they got. I suspect it's what they're saying they did. Tuohy said that they never made any money off the movie, except for Michael Lewis shared half of his amount with them, and it was I think $60,000, something like that. It was divided among everybody, and they said they gave Michael Orr a check for his part. What I think Mr. Orr is going to learn in the course of this, trying to find out what money they got, is they say in Hollywood the most creative people are not the actors, they're not the screenwriters, they're not the directors, they're the accountants. Every Hollywood studio has a lot of people, a lot of accountants whose job is to make it look like every blockbuster movie loses money. And the reason is you got a few people with contracts that say, "Oh, I get 0.5% of the net, never the gross anymore. It's always the net." And so the way they have this set up is you'll have one company that's making the movie, and you'll have the parent company, Paramount, Universal, United Artists, whoever. And they'll have other subdivisions. They'll have one that owns the soundstage where they're filming stuff. They'll have another that owns the equipment they use and they rent out, the cameras, the mics, all that. Another one that employs the makeup artists. And all of these charge money to the company that's actually making the movie. And the markup on these is typically something akin to a steak dinner in Osaka. I mean, it's huge. And the end result is, oh my gosh, 300 million people paid $15 to see this, but it lost money, because we just had to spend so much to make it. And so if anybody did have a residual deal where they were getting a percentage of the net, I would be shocked if if the studio had to write any checks, because they figured out a long time ago, every penny you pay somebody else is a penny you don't keep for yourself. So they're pretty good at that.
So you think this thing real quick, and Jack Turner, you are a graduate of the Hugo Black School of Law in Tuscaloosa, University of Alabama, Millsaps undergrad. One of my best friends. I love you. You're the Sidelines barrister in residence. Where do you think this thing's going to end up? I mean, again, the movie The Blind Side, everybody saw it. Every coach in the SEC went to visit with Michael Orr. Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss got him, but
Ed Orgeron and Ole Miss got him.
Yeah, Ed Orgeron. Yeah.
He was
Yeah, Hugh Freeze then went down to Ole Miss as the coach. Yeah. But you know what?
The story I've heard that I absolutely believe is that a certain SEC coach who was not at Ole Miss was screaming bloody murder about the relationship between the Tuohys and Orr, and went to the NCAA and said, this is improper. They're boosters. He can't go to Ole Miss. And so to placate the NCAA, the Orrs entered into this conservatorship, the Tuohys entered into this conservatorship with Michael Orr. Yeah, that gave them a legal relationship that meant that they could, just like with one of their kids, that he could go to Ole Miss and nothing they had done for him would be improper after that.
Okay. All right. That's it. Jack, look, I know you got a big day ahead of you. How do people contact you there in Memphis? You are the Sidelines barrister in residence. For those of you in Olathe, Kansas, that's lawyer, our attorney in residence, my attorney.
Actually, it's a good friends live in Olathe, but it's you can contact me at the Crone Law Firm. It's cronelawfirmplc.com. Call us at 901-737-7740. We'd be glad to talk to you. We typically focus on business relationships, but I've got partners who do personal injury, med-mal, you name it. We're a full-service law firm, anything but the domestic stuff. I did that for a year, and I learned it was kind of like being married to an nymphomaniac. For about the first 2 weeks, it was fun. So I don't do divorces anymore.
Okay. All right there, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Turner, barrister in residence for Sidelines. Let's do this. Jack, thank you so much. We'll get you back on here soon.
Thanks,
we're going to take a quick break, be back with one of the best sports writers, Phillip Marshall, longtime sports writer. Hope he never retires. Anytime something crazy is going on, Phillip, you seem to write things that make sense. So we're going to take a quick break and be right back with Phillip Marshall here for hour number 2 of Sidelines on this Wednesday edition right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Hour number 2, Sidelines Wednesday edition with Phillip Marshall. And Phillip, you've been writing and covering college football for a long time. And the portals here, we've got NIL, but you go back throughout your career and you weren't around, but my dad is. He's 95. He's listening. He remembers in the 1950s when it was announced that college football games were going to be on television. There was a fear that people wouldn't go to the games. And then we had other changes, the end of platoon football in the late 60s. We had, integration. We brought, black players into the Southeastern Conference, which, as Coach Dye said, was the best thing that ever happened, bringing people together. And he's right. And there have been other pivotal moments, 1984, Oklahoma and Georgia, the CFA lawsuit. Every game will be on TV. Well, people won't go. Well, what's happened? College football is more popular than ever. Is that how you see it? And where do you see us going forward? Because like the best guests we always have, the writers are the best because you think about what you're saying because you've written it.
Well, 1984 was really the pivotal year in the journey to where we are today. When Oklahoma and Georgia, which really was the CFA, as you said, they were the two who put their names on it. took control, went to the Supreme Court, or it got to the Supreme Court. They took control of college football TV away from the NCAA. And at that point, we started to where we are now, where pretty scary time, honestly, as far as college football goes, in my opinion, in that it's all about money. It's all about who can get the biggest TV contract, and you can see what's happened. I mean, to see the Pac-12, which is over 100 years old, just fall apart literally in a matter of hours, was pretty astonishing to watch.
It really was. And there'd been talk that schools, well, when the Big Ten grabbed Southern Cal and UCLA, that was the beginning of the end of that league. And we go back 100 years ago. I remember 2 years ago, David Housel came out and said, in 1923, 100 years ago, the Southern Conference had 23 members. And then 10 years later, the SEC was founded. 20 years later, the ACC was founded. So we've been here before. It's just none of us were there. There's a narrative, I guess culturally people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. NIL, the portal. I see us getting through it, and I see the free market working this stuff out. Basically, with enough kids are going to get into the portal and not get picked up to where it's going to go back to the old grind it out, stick it out, and don't quit. Because if you leave Alabama or Ole Miss after 3 or 4 years and leave for 1 year to go somewhere else, can you come back to that school if things don't work out at that other school?
Well, you got more confidence than I do. I think it's I think the transfer, really, I think the penalty-free transfers. People say the transfer portal. I think it's the penalty-free transfers, and I don't believe that's going to change. That's going to be, and in some ways it's good. If a guy's not good enough to play where he is and he wants to play, then there's nothing wrong with going somewhere else. But and for whatever reason, but I don't think it was unreasonable. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. It was completely ridiculous when the coach of the school you were leaving could dictate where you could go, where you would be released to. That was insane. That never made sense to me. And I always knew that sooner or later somebody would challenge it, and that would be the end of that. But I think the penalty-free transfer, I don't think sitting out a year is unreasonable if you've signed the scholarship and now you want to go somewhere else. But that's not going to change. You're not going to go back on anything. That's just not going to happen. I mean, you can say you don't like NIL or you don't like that or you don't, but you're not going to be able to take away what you've already given. And so I don't see that changing as far as NIL goes. I think that's, in some cases it's overblown. And in some cases, it's an outright bidding war to see where guys go. And there's dire need of some kind of guardrails. And whether that's going to happen, I don't know.
Phillip, I like to watch at media days how you interact with the coaches up there. You've been around. You respect them. They respect you. Coaches. When people are making accusations, which happens a lot, I like to hear what you say. Jimbo Fisher, you knew him when he was at Auburn for 6 years. And I watch, when you'll talk to him and ask really good questions, as always, at media days. And I'm sure you met Bobby Petrino when he was at Auburn.
Yep. Knew him well.
And I think Bobby Petrino is going to call the plays. And I think Jimbo Fisher, if you're an Auburn fan, and Terry Bowden and that whole crowd saved Auburn from going into the abyss of irrelevancy the year after Alabama won the national championship and Auburn got put with a 2-year probation. I always have a special place in my heart. I don't care what anybody says for that whole staff. Do you feel like that Jimbo Fisher is going to say, hey, man, I want to win. I think that one of the smartest offensive minds I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, damn right. I'm going to let him call the plays.
Well, that's a good question, and I really can't answer it because I don't know. And yes, I've known Jimbo well, known Bobby Petrino very well. He and I had a very good relationship when he was at Auburn and since. But I will say this: they are both very intense guys. Now, I'm not is what Bobby does going to be as effective now as it was 20 years ago, which is when he was at Auburn. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he's got a lot of good players or a lot of talented players, but as far as how Jimbo and he are going to interact, I think we just have to wait and see. They're both pretty volatile guys, and that's going to be one of the interesting storylines of the SEC this season. And I think that Jimbo, I don't know what or why, but obviously he hasn't even come close to living up to expectations at Texas A&M, and whether that will change this year, that's kind of like Texas. Every single year, this is going to be the year for Texas, and for more than a decade, it's never been the year for Texas. So we'll see.
Yeah. Phillip, Hugh Freeze in his first year at Auburn, I remember him when he was coaching up here in middle school and high school at Briarcrest. And the one thing we've always known about him, he can flat out recruit. And it seemed to me like there was a closed for business sign in the recruiting office at Auburn for a few years. And better than anybody, and your father, great sports writer, you were so fortunate, and you've told me, you're getting to be around these great coaches like Coach Jordan, Coach Bryant, and the respect they have for you and the respect you have for them. A lot of writers today are just throwing stuff up against the wall hoping it sticks. The thing about you is you're quiet, almost intimidating, because but you think about what you write. And I don't know what it is. Not every writer can do this. The attacks on Hugh Freeze, I mean, people can always, and I've always said, hey, if you can't learn to forgive, it's just don't make the mistakes over and over. But what are your thoughts about Hugh Freeze, his journey through life? And is he different than any other coach that you've ever interviewed and known over the years?
Well, I'll say this. I'm a big believer in second chances because I've had more than my share of second chances. But I said from the start when he got the job that if he did what he needed to do, it would quickly disappear as a factor. And I rarely ever hear it mentioned. Whatever happened with him at Ole Miss, and it's but he's done. And you're right about the. I mean, Brian Harson's the only coach I've ever seen or heard of that did not seem to think that recruiting was that big of a deal. And this program was really on the verge of being. But to be honest with you, we were talking about the transfer portal. Were it not for the transfer portal, this thing would be looking at winning 2 or 3 games. And I don't know how many they're going to win, but they got a chance to win a good bit more than that, I think. And he is a great recruiter. He seems to. People are excited, and he's pushed all the right buttons so far, both in recruiting and how he's interacted with the community and with his players. He hadn't coached a game yet, but he's pushed the right buttons to this point.
Yeah. And you look around and you get to interview a lot of coaches, and the relationship part of it. You got kids like DeMarcus Riddick from Clanton, Alabama, Perry Thompson from Foley. Alabama's done really well out down there over the years, but he's not Hugh Freeze and this staff. Cadillac Williams, Cadillac.
Oh, yeah.
What he did last year in those last 4 games was like nothing I don't think we've ever seen before. he rallied Auburn in the face of a Cat 5 hurricane, it seemed. And that atmosphere, the night of the Texas A&M game, is something that still is resonating. And I think it's resonating with recruits because that was a team basically, trying to get to 500.
Well, it was two teams like that. There was 2 3-win teams.
Yeah.
And that was pretty. The atmosphere was like there were. I mean, it's not overblown to say the atmosphere in the stadium was like they were playing for a championship. It was quite amazing, really. And Cadillac, he instilled hope and energy and back into the program, he has said numerous times that he had never even thought about being a head coach before, and I just talked to him yesterday. He is still amazed by what happened and thankful, and the fact that he didn't. In the end, he would have liked to have had the job. Now I'm gonna tell you, but you don't see many people then stay around in a situation like that, and he's still here, and he loves Auburn. And I talked to him and Zach Etheridge and Marcus Davis, the 3 Auburn guys on that staff who all have championship rings, and Auburn means a great deal to all of them. And but talking to Cadillac, it just makes you feel better. He's such a positive guy, and obviously players are drawn to him. And it's look, coaches are like everybody else. I respect the amount of time they have to work. I'm not sure head football coaches are worth $8, $9, $10 million a year, but I think sports writers are, but not coaches.
I agree. I think, what I miss, Phillip, I miss the sports writers, the Sky Writers tour. Every time Buddy Martin's on here, or you talk about, and you made a funny quote one time, I think it was you or Buddy Martin said this, that someone wanted to write a book, and he said, well, I don't know if we wanted to do that. But I think back growing up as a kid in Memphis and reading, Bobby Hall, Mike Fleming, George Lapidus, John Pruitt, who you worked for in the Huntsville Times, just the writers, y'all would go drive on a Saturday morning to see Coach Jordan, Coach Bryant, Coach Vaught, whoever. And then let's fast forward it, and just y'all would listen and come back and write these half-page stories with some pictures in there. And I can still remember we had to read. I mean, the Tobacco Corner newsroom in Memphis at Poplar and Mendenhall. I'd go in on a Sunday, get the Birmingham News, Atlanta Constitution, Huntsville Times, Montgomery Advertiser, anything I could get my hands on. And now it's all online, but you're still writing like you did when you wrote in the print. Maybe not as many words on those columns, but do you ever have an opportunity to interact with some of the younger writers? And do they ever ask you for your advice? Because Jason Caldwell's on here with us a lot. Mark Murphy has been a mentor for me in print journalism for 42 years. I respect the people. David Housel, Buddy Davidson, Reba Gullidge, we all know how important she was. She kept everybody sane. But without y'all, Phillip, none of us would care.
Well, do they ask me for advice? Probably about as much as I asked people for advice when I was young and thought I knew everything. But the business has changed greatly, and we've all had to change with it to an extent. I haven't changed as much as some people that I work for would probably like for me to change. But I'm getting near the end of the road, and I'm too old to change. So, but it's but yeah, I watch these young guys, and I can see a lot of myself in those days. It's just that it's such a different thing, though. It's just what they do compared to what I did when I was their age is very different.
Yeah. Do you think off the record is still respected and held as with as much reverence as it was when you were coming up as a young reporter?
I think so.
Good.
I think if somebody says they're off the record, I think, and that's always been an issue. Coach says, "Well, I thought it was off the record." Well, if you want it to be off the record, you better tell me. Don't assume that I'm going to assume that it's off the record.
Yeah.
And but I don't think that's changed a lot, honestly.
I love hearing that. Okay, a few more questions. This is the next question is, who's the toughest interview of a coach, head coach, that you've ever had? It could be after a loss or after a win.
The toughest interview after I'm not sure I could answer that. I can't. There's not many. There's certain. There are certain times. I'll tell you one. And in 1983, when Auburn beat Florida at Jordan-Hare Stadium, I think they were both in the top 5 at the time. There was a play when Neil Anderson, to the naked eye, looked for all the world like he had scored a touchdown, and then dropped the ball. And they called it and the ball went through the end zone. They called it a touchback.
Yeah.
And it just looked like it was absolutely the wrong call until they showed the replay, and he dropped the ball at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like he just threw it down dry. He fumbled at the 1 yard line. And after the game, Charlie Pell was Florida coach, and he was livid. And 2 years earlier, Florida had caught a fumble in the air and run it in for a touchdown, and there'd been an inadvertent whistle, and it had not counted.
Yeah.
So and Auburn won, I think, 14-12 in that game.
Yep.
So Pell was livid when he came to the locker room after the 83 game, and he said, we got screwed here 2 years ago when it happened again today. That was obviously a touchdown. And one of the writers said, Coach, looking at the replay, it looked like it was a good call. He said, I don't give a damn what the replay said. But I can't really think of any guys that have been just I mean, Brian Harsin was just basically unfriendly all the time, so it didn't that wasn't anything different. But I really can't. I can't think of any. Just I've seen a lot of coaches be upset after games, but as far as just being a consistently bad post game interview, I really can't think of one.
Yeah, and you think about, and I'm getting a text here from a friend of mine who was a TV reporter for a long time. He said Coach Bryant was a tough interview, and I'm saying, well, I mean, I never interviewed him, but you were around him, man. You grew up with your father, Benny Marshall, great sports writer. And, as your father, you learned so much. And some of the stories you've told over the years on this show, or just to me, they're book worthy. And so going to the Sugar Bowl with Coach Bryant, 1973, when they played Notre Dame, how much fun was that for you as a young, like in college or maybe right out of college?
It was, well, first about Coach Bryant, he and my father were close. So I had I had known him to an extent since I was like 10 years old. So, I wasn't nearly as intimidated by him maybe as some people were. So I never had any problem interviewing Coach Bryant. But as far as that 1973 game, I don't really recall any specifics about it except that it was a great game and the Notre Dame pass out of the end zone that basically sealed it.
Yeah. And you look back at, in just a couple more minutes, all the great writers that came up. And again, I dread the day you retire, because whenever there's so much information that comes at us, and it's like first 24 hours, accusations, whatever it is. But I go back to the Cam Newton deal back in early November of 2010. You were one of the lone voices in the wilderness making any sense. And have you had a chance to talk to Cam in the years since then about, or ever ask him, did that affect him, or did that just motivate him to work even harder? Because they built a statue for him at Auburn, pretty special. And by the way, were you there the day, October 8th of 2021, when Cliff Hare, Coach Dye, and Coach Jordan's statues were unveiled?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But as far as Cam goes, I don't know that I've ever asked him that specific question, but obviously he, of course, he's so immensely talented, and he was able to just to put it aside and go on. I think from conversations I had with him when he was at Auburn, I think seeing his family go through it was maybe the hardest part. But he and you got to give Gene Chizik credit too for holding that team together through all that stuff. And everybody was saying that they weren't going to be able to keep the national championship and all that stuff. But yeah, as far as covering the story, I had good sources, and I tried to be, I tried to just to cover the story, and unfortunately, there were a lot of people who made a lot of assumptions and believed every conspiracy theory that came along, and but in the end, the NCAA wrote a letter exonerating Auburn and Cam Newton, which is something they never do. So, and look, there are a whole lot of people that will believe forever that he got this huge amount of money, and all I know is that there was never any indication of it, that nothing to show he or his family had gotten that kind of money. Now, Lord only knows how much money he would have gotten today.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I asked Cadillac Williams that question yesterday. I said, how much NIL money would you have gotten? And he laughed and he said, maybe Cadillac would have come calling, like the company. And he said,
yeah.
He said, I probably would have got a couple of dollars. Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's a great question, Phillip. I mean, that man, see, that's but Cadillac and Zach Etheridge, and then we have Coach Phillip Lolly on this show from time to time. I have to get him on here in the next couple of weeks. Y'all, you represent what we love about college football. So I know you got a big day ahead of you. And are you back in Huntsville, or are you still living in Auburn? Are you kind of splitting time?
I live in Decatur, where my daughter lives. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, how do people follow you, keep up with you, your great writing, and really your intuition and your wisdom are, you can't put a price tag on it, but I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday morning to be on here with us, and looking forward to getting you on during the season when you're available. But again, I want people to be able to keep up with you and follow you.
Yeah, just the Auburn Undercover, auburn.247sports.com. And or I guess on Twitter. I'm not a big Twitter guy. Mainly I just link stories, but it's P Marsh on AU on Twitter, and that's about it. And I don't I'm not a I don't do I do some of our podcast, our company podcasts from time to time, but I'm not a podcast guy either. I'm just old. That's all it amounts to. And been doing this for 54 years in October. So we're getting close to the end of the line.
Man, I tell you what, keep doing what you do. We love it because it's where the best information, the best stories come from. Folks, Phillip Marshall have been with us. We're going to be right back with Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, after this break. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you, man. Great segment with Phillip Marshall. Man, I'm telling you what, I love the sports writers who've been doing it a long time. They put things in perspective. I will say this. What we see a lot of in today's world is jumping out there, trying to be in front of everybody. Don't worry about getting it right. Just try to get it first. For clickbait, shock value, shock and awe, whatever the hell you want to call it. But it is a dangerous way. It's a dangerous path for journalists. It's not really, journalism is being responsible, getting both sides of the story. If you do that, then you're able to tell the story more accurately. But I think the problem that we have now is that way too many people are driven by a narrative that they want to push. And that folks is why we have a lot of the stories that we have coming out that are not based on any substantive evidence. You got to be very, very careful. I see it over and over. Rodney Orr gets to cover Alabama every day in Tuscaloosa. It's been doing it since 1996 with Tighter Insider. It's only $48 a year. And for that, you get all the forums. You get everything that they have covering the Tide. And you also get Tighter Insider TV Tuesday nights, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, folks. Now, if you live in the Eastern Time Zone, that would be 7:30 Eastern. Or if you live in the Pacific Coast, like our good friend Dave Cody, that would be 5:30 p.m. Pacific Mountain Time. But Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, last night, y'all were breaking down preseason practice. You get to see what you see, but you get information. You use every source and contact that you've got. Let's start with the obvious at Alabama, the wide receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks, and also Kevin Steele, who I think is an elite defensive coordinator, back for his third stint on Nick Saban's staff. So, but let's start with the offense.
Well, I think that's a great question. I think about that a lot, Rob, in terms of as you look at this team and what they could potentially be. And again, all you can go on is a feel. Right now we don't really know, and we don't get a lot of opportunities to watch them in practice. And I still don't know if you would know exactly. You have a great feel for where this was headed, because there are questions. I think the offensive line has a chance to be really, really good. I do. Once they get settled on who they're going with up front, they've got 5 to 6, 7 guys that I think they feel really good about right now. And the combination, we'll see how that works out. That may take a little time for that to develop. I think the running backs, we feel really good about those guys. I mean, those are high quality. That's a quartet of high quality backs. I think maybe even 5 of them. Richard Young's a true freshman too, that with Justice Haynes, those guys have a lot of potential. So I think it's a really good running back room. I think the wide receivers have potential, a lot of potential, but the question is consistency. They haven't caught the ball consistently, didn't do it in A-Day. The times we've had an opportunity to watch them here in camp, they haven't caught the ball really well in terms of consistently. Had some key drops. And our sources that are there that observe continue to tell us the same thing. And Nick Saban addressed it here the last few days. He said, what's the definition of a receiver? It's a guy who catches the ball. That's what they're supposed to do. These guys are too good to be dropping balls. I'll just say that. They're too talented of players to be dropping balls. And they've got to do it because the quarterback needs some help. And speaking of that, I think there's still a lot of questions about the quarterback. Milroe has done a good job. I think he's steadily shown some improvement. And he's probably positioning himself as we head into the second scrimmage to potentially be the starter against MTSU. And I think that's where it is right now. I think Ty's done some good things. It's consistency. Once again, we get that word, consistency. I think Buckner's a guy that I think can manage the whole thing. But I think, again, it's just the familiarity and getting accustomed to those around him and, feeling good about it. So I think right now, again, Milroe at quarterback. I'm a little concerned about, this offense early in the season. I think that Texas game would be huge. Defensively, hearing a lot of really good things. We've talked about Kevin Steele repeatedly on this show and how high I am on him. And I think he's going to bring a lot of good things in terms of, just fundamentally sound tackling, the kind of mindset that you need. Rob, I watched the times I've got a chance to see them, actually lay my eyes on them. I'm impressed with the fire that they play with. They've missed that. I think this is Kevin Steele. I think this is what he brings. So defensively, I feel good. I think they've got a chance to have a really good pass rush. They've got great secondary players, some inexperience, but I think it's got a chance to be a really high quality secondary. The one thing I will say is, and it's like somebody pointed out to me, when we talk about all these things on defense, if they can't stop the run, that's going to be something that could be an issue. So I'm not saying that they won't be able to stop the run. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's going to be the key, is to be able to line up, play good, fundamentally sound up front defensively, not get misaligned, which I understand they've had some issues with that up front defensively. So they're going to have to be consistent on the defensive line.
Yeah, and we look at, and a lot of people will tell you that they think, and I'm one of them, that I won't be surprised if Alabama doesn't go run heavy early in the season as they're finding their quarterback. And
right.
You got a really strong running back room. Why the hell not do it? And that plays right into the success of the defense. That's what Kevin Steele was brought back to do, was to put that alpha male culture back in place. And you talk about the linebacker room. You and Gary Harris have mentioned it. There are 8 5-star linebackers on the roster at Alabama. Who are some names in the linebacker core that people aren't familiar with that you think are ready to emerge and step up, maybe even start?
Well, obviously on the outside, everybody's familiar with Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner. Those guys you're going to see them on the field, obviously, quite a bit as starters. And then also, I think a couple of guys behind them, Quandarius Robinson is look good at times. I think obviously Keanu Coote is a guy that's really talented. They've got Keon Keeley. Everyone's talking about him, the true freshman. He probably has a ways to go developmental wise. Most of them do. Johannes Pierre is another guy. Jeremiah Alexander. We could go on and on. I'm probably forgetting somebody, on the edge that because they do have a boatload of guys that came in as 5-star rated players by one recruiting service or another. You look at the inside backers. I think Deontay Lawson has a chance to be a star player. I really do. I think that's a name that keep an eye on that. I think he'll really become a household name, at some point this year. And then I think too, I think the young sophomore, Jahad Campbell, next to him on the inside, is a guy to really keep your ear out for. You got Trez Marshall, who transferred in from Georgia. He had a pick 6 in the scrimmage the other day. It's another guy. And Justin Jefferson, the junior college transfer, he's another guy inside. Sean Murphy. So they've got some guys. It's just a matter of them stepping up. And look, anytime you've got Kevin Steele over there, I feel really confident with those linebackers, even though Steele's going to walk around defensive coordinator. He's going to have a lot of influence there. So, and I'm hearing really good things about the new inside linebackers coach, Robert Bala. I think that he's a really smart guy based on everything I've been told, a really young, intelligent, coach, and he's going to do a really good job. So I feel good about that. And, Rob, I think it's going to be a good group. I'm excited to see this defense. I really am. I know there's some question marks in terms of the experience on that side of the ball. And I know there's some question marks about the play up front. Is it going to be consistent overall? So we'll see about that. But otherwise, I feel pretty confident about the defense. I'm more concerned right now is, you got to be able to. Yeah, I think Alabama's going to be able to run the ball. But I think when you play Texas, you play Tennessee, you play Texas A&M on the road, you play, Auburn down there. If you're fortunate to make it to the SEC championship game, you're going to probably play Georgia. There's not a lot of competition in the East. So you play Georgia. How do you beat Georgia? You beat them with the ability to throw the ball down the field. I mean, that's just the way it is. That that you got to be able to challenge them down the field. So I look at all those things and say, offensively, Alabama's probably got a little ways to go.
You mentioned last week, Alabama, 3 big guys on the defensive line. But we all know your front 7 in the SEC, to get to Atlanta, you've got to be 2 and 3 deep at every position. So defensive lineman, you look at Kevin Steele, wherever he's been, it all starts up front.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be the case this year? Let's talk about that depth.
Yeah. And look, I feel, based on everything I've heard, Jaheim Otis has got a chance to be a really, really good player. Justin Aboybe was having a great year last year before he got injured. He got off to a great start. It was unfortunate that he missed the season, but, again, he's back. And I think Tim Smith has All-American potential. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Why has he not gotten any better since his freshman year? When I thought, wow, I looked at him and saw the flash in him, and I said, this guy's going to be really good. I even thought that coming out of high school. And what about the guys behind him? You've recruited a lot of players. These aren't bad players. I mean, why aren't they improving up front? Or maybe they have. That's something that we're going to see, as this season goes along, as the season gets underway. I mean, Nick Saban said they had 5 guys that he felt comfortable with up front defensively, 5 or 6. But you've got some other guys that have been around. Monkel Goodwine, Curtis Perry, James Smith, true freshman. I'm rattling off some names. Sometimes it takes guys a little while, but you look at these guys like a Curtis Perry and get him on the field. Let's see why is it that he's not taking that next step. What about Jamarian Latham? I think that's a guy that could be really good. So again, I think a lot of these questions that we're asking right now, it's just because we don't know until they're actually on the field.
Yeah, and the first few games are going to tell a lot. I mean, that the Texas game in game 2, by then you want to have your quarterback, but you may not. It doesn't sound like they're ready to name a starter. But also, there's part of me that thinks, Rodney, that the coaches are at every school are waiting as long as they can to name starters because they don't want guys to have enough time to get into the portal and leave. If you've got to have depth, you need 3 or 4 quarterbacks because they get banged up. Last year Jalen Milroe had to start in the Texas A&M game, and that was scary. That went down to the last play of the game. And you're going to have games like that this year. But I go back looking at that defensive front. The best teams in America, they start up front with a great pass rush. Edge rushers are great, but the 2 or 3, if you play, but depending on the kind of defense you play, you get that surge up the middle. I mean, that's just everything. Now, who is another new coach on that Alabama staff people aren't familiar with that you mentioned the linebacker coach, but anybody else on the staff or any changes? Because I know behind the scenes, you cannot help but just marvel at what Alabama's strength and conditioning program does. They develop players where a lot of schools, the guy gets there his freshman year, that's probably as good as he'll ever be. Not the case really at Alabama.
Well, I mean, obviously, you're talking about new coaches. I think there's still some question about Tommy Rees. That's not a negative thing. I mean, obviously, he did a really good job with what he had at Notre Dame. I just don't think anyone really knows. I mean, there's a lot of confidence that he's going to do a really good job with the personnel that they have. And there's one area that we haven't mentioned is the tight ends. And I think that's going to be a group. That's going to be a group to really watch, because C.J. Dupree, the tight end, the transfer from Maryland, I think he's going to be a major factor in this offense. I think Amari Nyblack, and I've been saying this for I don't know how long, he's going to be a major factor in this offense. I like Danny Lewis, another tight end. I like Robbie Oots, a guy that had some success against Auburn when they finally started using him in a few different ways. And I think, too, Miles Kitselman's another guy, maybe even forgetting somebody. Ty Lockwood, the true freshman, had some catches in this last scrimmage. He's going to eventually be a good player. So they've got a really good tight end room, and I think Tommy Rees is going to utilize it. I think he's going to utilize it quite a bit, actually. So that's an area to really watch. But I think people are excited to see, okay, what is Tommy Rees going to put on the field? Now, I will say this, too. People need to understand that, coming into this season right now with the way things are with the quarterback situation, it's going to, I don't want to say it's going to be tough or difficult. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he's got an inexperienced guy, no matter who it is. If it's Milrow, if it's Ty Simpson, if it's eventually Tyler Buckner, and even Dylan Lonergan, the true freshman's getting some reps now. So it's going to be a work in progress a little bit offensively. And I think the second game of the year, Texas, when they come in here, it's going to be a real important game for Alabama. They've got to figure out a way to win that game, Rob.
Yeah, and you look at the preseason rankings: Texas number 11, Tennessee number 12, Bama number 4, Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3. It's almost like most of these writers, the voters, are just looking at what happened at the end of last year. But, Matt Stinchcomb on SEC Network, don't put Georgia number 1, put Michigan up there. Georgia doesn't know who their quarterback's going to be. And I mean, you can have fun with that. But it's the lowest.
Georgia, let's leave no mistake about it heading into the season. Okay. Yeah. Heading into the season, Rob, you know this. Georgia's the program. Yeah. They're number 1. They should be number 1. Okay, maybe Michigan has gotten in the playoffs and they've flopped. They have. Yeah. They flopped. And I'm not down. Maybe this is the year they take that next step. But you're talking about the preseason rankings. I understand why they would be ranked low. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know all the other teams, because there's transfer portals that change your program, that change your roster, that change the outlook for your team. So we really don't know how do you put together a top 25. I think it's really difficult. I would say this, from where I am right now, there's a lot of questions about Alabama. I think 4 is pretty high for them, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I would have them at number 4. And I'm not saying that they won't be number 1 when it's all said and done. I'm just saying, with the question marks that I see, I'm kind of saying, okay, people are saying, well, 4 is kind of low for Bama. No, I really don't think it is for this team, because we just don't know.
Well, it's the lowest in 14 years, but the questions about quarterback going to make it like that. But that's the fun of it. I mean, that's something the coaches have to go out there with every day and say, They got y'all number 4. We don't even know who our quarterback's going to be. And that's you're looking for any little angle that you can find. I mean, that's the thing about it. And watching with college football, the rankings, they really don't even mean anything till about the middle of October, Rodney.
I agree. 100%. Hey, Rob, let's go back. Okay. You're an Auburn guy, so I'm going to make you feel pretty good right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back to 2010.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Alabama coming off a national championship, Auburn coming off of an 8-5 season. Nobody's expecting Auburn to do anything, right? And of course they had Cam Newton. That was the year they had Cam Newton. But if you would have said before the season, one of these teams is coming in playing a spoiler role, and the other team's going to come in for a chance at a national championship, it would not have been Auburn with that chance. And it would not have been Alabama in the spoilers role. That's how it played out. I only use that as an example to say you're exactly right. I mean, I see people on Tighter Insider talking about how bad Auburn's going to be. I mean, I really don't know that. I mean, I don't. How do we know exactly with the people he's brought in on the offensive line, with the quarterback from Michigan State? I assume he's going to be their quarterback. I don't know, but they brought in a lot of different players. And I think that he's brought in, not only that, he's brought in a different attitude down there. I'm just using Auburn as an example. We don't know where they're going to be mid-October. We don't know where any of these teams are going to be. But I will say this, too, while I'm rambling. Rob had a lot of coffee this morning, so I kind of feel like Rob Browne a little bit.
There you go.
I'm pretty hyped up. But I will say this, Rob. I think the team to really watch in the SEC West is Texas A&M. I mean, this is it. They're coming off a bad year. They vastly underachieved. If Jimbo Fisher doesn't turn this thing around this year in a significant way, then I'm not sure they will, because they've got some good players up front. They've got some great receivers. They've got Bobby Petrino calling the offense now. And all due respect to Jimbo, get out of the way and let Bobby Petrino call it, because I think they've got a young quarterback who's got a chance to be pretty good. Defensively, they have a ton of talent. There's no reason why they shouldn't be really good. They get Alabama in College Station. This is a team that I think could be really the one to watch in the SEC West. I don't want to say a sleeper, but a team that could emerge, like you said, in October. Say, wow, Texas A&M, they're really good.
Well, they really are. Texas A&M. Well, the thing that bothers you whenever you're playing a team is if they're in a desperate situation. And I think Texas A&M is kind of like that now. And you know what? College football, the great thing about it is it's August 16th. And you're talking 2 months from now. That's when the rankings really mean something. So, yeah, that's why we love this game so much. Look, unfortunately, we have run out of time. And let me say something real quick. Think about this, folks. We'll get more information about it. But Main Street, Collierville's Taste of the Town will be September 30th. That's out there on the square, Collierville. Charles Hall, Laura Hall, our great friends that Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. It's all out there. Get ready. And their new brands like Pendleton, Schaefer, Danner, Vask, Light Boots, and Higher Boots are coming in every day. And don't forget, first ever St. Paul Open, October 2nd, Chickasaw Country Club. Call Michael Jordan, 901-647-3014. Rodney, let people know, again, how they can keep up with you, all the great content that you're putting out, your TV show and everything. And again, always appreciate you taking time out of your morning to join us. You are Superman in more ways than people realize. I got a ton of respect for you and always love having you on here.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob. And to all the Alabama fans out there, first, I'm not trying to be negative. I wasn't trying to preview this thing in a negative fashion. I just see all the, question marks when I'm close to it. So, but yeah, it's TighterInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check. It gives you all our premium information, but also our all sports forum. That's our community of Alabama fans. A lot of discussion there, a lot of information, a lot of exchange. It's just really nonstop, Rob, on TighterInsider.com.
Well, we appreciate it as always. Again, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, people. Don't ever, ever forget that. American exceptionalism is what makes America exceptional. It is a land of the people. The free speech, the First Amendment. That's what this show is all about. We back it up every day. Until tomorrow, have a great one. We are out of here.